The sky burned orange as another wave of debris fell through Earth's atmosphere. Admiral Tai-Ho Park stood on the observation platform and watched the massive chunks of metal crash into the ocean 3 kilometers away. Each impact sent a column of water shooting into the air. Each piece was another insult from the stars. The galactic hegemony had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They controlled trade, technology, and the fate of every species under their watch. Humanity had joined their grand civilization only 40 years ago, and in that time, humans had learned one painful truth. The hegemony did not see them as equals. They saw them as useful animals. Tai-Ho remembered his first trip to the hegemony capital world. He had been a young officer then, full of hope and wonder. The alien cities had taken his breath away. Towers of crystal and light stretched into purple skies. Ships moved like silver fish through the air. Technology beyond anything Earth had ever dreamed filled every corner of that world. But then, he had seen how the aliens looked at him. Their eyes held no respect, only amusement, only pity. To them, humans were clever pets who had learned to walk upright and build simple machines. Now those same aliens were dumping their garbage on Earth and calling it a gift, the hegemony. Ambassador arrived at the platform in a floating transport. His name was Vreth, and he belonged to a species called the Kathrani. He stood 2 meters tall with gray skin, 4 arms, and compound eyes that saw everything and respected nothing. When he stepped onto the platform, his mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among his kind. Admiral Vreth said, "I trust the delivery meets your expectations." Tai-Ho looked at the burning sky. "You are very generous, Ambassador." "The hegemony takes care of its member species," Vreth replied. "After the Rim Wars, we found ourselves with much obsolete equipment, broken ships, damaged weapons, failed reactors. Rather than waste resources disposing of this material, we thought your people might find use for it." "Use for it," Tai-Ho repeated. "Yes, perhaps you can melt it down, build shelters, create simple tools." Vreth's mandibles clicked again. "We know how your species loves to work with your hands. Very industrious, very cute." Tai-Ho felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his face calm. He had learned long ago that showing emotion to the hegemony was a weakness they would exploit. Instead, he simply nodded. "We are grateful for the hegemony's consideration," he said. Vreth seemed pleased by this response. He expected nothing else from humans. Gratitude and obedience were all his kind ever saw in Earth's people. After the ambassador left, Tai-Ho remained on the platform for another hour. He watched the debris fall. He watched the smoke rise from impact sites across the Pacific, and he thought about everything humanity had endured since first contact. The hegemony had given Earth access to the stars, but they had given nothing else. They refused to share their advanced technology. They blocked humans from high-level education. They limited what ships humanity could build and what weapons they could carry. Every time human scientists made a breakthrough, hegemony advisors appeared to explain why such research was inappropriate for a developing species. They kept humanity in a cage and called it protection. Tai-Ho pulled out his communicator and made a call. "Dr. King, the delivery is complete. Begin collection." On the other end, a woman's voice answered. "Understood, Admiral. My teams are ready." Unikong was the finest engineer humanity had ever produced. She had grown up in the slums of New Busan, building machines from scraps before she could read. By the time she was 20, she had designed engines that hegemony inspectors called surprisingly competent for human work. By 30, she had been quietly recruited into Earth's most secret program. The hegemony did not know about this program. They did not know that for 15 years, humanity had been collecting every piece of alien technology they could find. They did not know that hidden facilities around the world held teams of scientists studying hegemony equipment. And they certainly did not know that humans were far more clever than they appeared. Yuna arrived at the primary collection site within 2 hours. The debris field stretched for kilometers. A graveyard of alien warships that had died in battles humanity was never told about. Smoke still rose from cooling metal. The smell of burned circuits and unknown chemicals filled the air. Her team moved quickly and quietly. They wore no uniforms that might identify them. Their vehicles carried no markings. To any observer, they looked like simple salvage. Workers doing exactly what the hegemony expected, gathering junk to melt down, but Yuna saw something very different in the wreckage. She knelt beside a massive chunk of hull plating and ran her scanner over its surface. The readings made her heart race. This was armor from a hegemony battlecruiser, the kind of ship that could destroy Earth's entire fleet in minutes. The alloy was beyond anything human science could produce. "Mark this for priority transport," she told her assistant, a young man named Doyon Lee. "Category Alpha." Doyon nodded and attached a small beacon to the metal. "There's more over here. Looks like a weapons array. Plasma-based, I think." Yuna moved to examine it. The weapon was badly damaged, its barrel melted, and its power systems fried. A hegemony engineer would have called it worthless scrap. But Yuna saw the underlying design. She saw how the components fit together. She saw possibilities. "They really think we're stupid," she said quietly. "They've thought that for 40 years, Doyen replied. "And we've let them think it," Yuna smiled. "That ends now." Over the next several weeks, collection teams gathered debris from sites around the world. The hegemony had been thorough in their dumping. They had dropped millions of tons of wreckage on every continent. They had done this publicly, making sure that every human saw their generous gift. What they did not see was where the debris went after collection, deep beneath the mountains of Korea. A facility existed that appeared on no map. It had been built in secret over 2 decades, funded by governments that publicly obeyed every hegemony restriction. The facility was called Ghost, and it was humanity's greatest hope. Admiral Taiho visited Ghost 3 days after the debris delivery was complete. He walked through corridors carved from solid rock and passed through security checkpoints that would stop anyone without proper clearance. Finally, he reached the main research bay. The sight took his breath away. Thousands of workers moved among mountains of alien wreckage. Scientists operated scanning equipment that humanity had built in secret. Engineers carefully disassembled weapons and reactors that the hegemony considered too advanced for human minds. The entire facility hummed with activity and purpose. Yuna met him at the entrance to the bay. Her eyes were bright with excitement. "Admiral," she said, "they gave us everything we need. Everything." Reactor cores from 3 different species. Weapon systems from 5 more. Shield generators, propulsion units, sensor arrays. Yuna spread her arms wide. They threw away their old technology like it was garbage. "But to us, it's a complete education in galactic engineering." Taiho looked at the organized chaos before him. "How long until you understand it?" "Understanding is not the goal, Admiral." Yuna's smile grew wider. "We're going to improve it." Somewhere above them, Ambassador Vreth was probably laughing about the foolish humans and their pile of junk. He had no idea that his gift had just armed humanity with everything they needed to change the galaxy forever. The first step of humanity's revenge had begun. 6. Passed inside the Ghost facility. 6 months of sleepless nights, failed experiments, and small victories that slowly became large ones. The teams worked in shifts that never ended. They ate at their stations. They slept in bunks carved into the rock walls. They gave everything they had to a project that the galaxy said was impossible. Dr. Minsu Cho led the theoretical research division. He was a thin man, with tired eyes and hands that never stopped moving. Before Ghost, he had been a professor at Seoul National University. He had published papers on quantum mechanics that hegemony reviewers had called amusing attempts at understanding concepts beyond human capacity. Those reviews had made Minsu angry. That anger had made him determined. And that determination had brought him here, to a secret laboratory where he was proving every alien critic wrong. The hegemony builds their technology in isolation, Minsu explained to his team during a morning briefing. Each species develops their own systems. They never share. They never combine. A Kathrani reactor will never connect to a Vorian weapon array because their cultures forbid cooperation. But we have no such limitations, said Lieutenant Commander Hannah. Yoon, she stood at the back of the room with her arms crossed. Hannah had spent 15 years in special forces before. Joining Ghost, her job was to turn scientific discoveries into military applications. Exactly. Insu pulled up a holographic display, showing 3 different reactor designs. This is a Kathrani fusion core. This is a Vorian antimatter chamber. And this is a Deltheran plasma converter. Each one alone is powerful. But together they would explode, said Doyen Lee from his seat near the front. Minsu smiled. That's what hegemony engineering says. But hegemony engineering is limited by hegemony thinking. They assume these systems cannot work together because they have never tried. They have never even considered trying. And we have, Hannah asked. We have done more than consider. Minsu changed the display to show a new design. It was complex and strange, combining elements from all 3 reactor types. We have built a prototype. It should not work according to everything the hegemony knows about physics. But it does work. It works better than any of them alone.
Oh.
The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Humanity was not just copying alien technology. They were surpassing it. The breakthrough had come from an accident. Doyen had been testing a damaged Kathrani power conduit when it unexpectedly connected to a Vorian energy cell. The resulting reaction should have destroyed the laboratory. Instead, it produced a stable power output 300% higher than either system could manage alone. Doyen had nearly died of shock. Then he had spent the next 2 weeks figuring out why the impossible had happened. The hegemony thinks in straight lines, he explained to Admiral Taiho during a private meeting. They build technology the same way they build society. Everything in its proper place. No mixing. No experimentation. They have rules that go back thousands of years, and they never break them. But humans break rules, Taiho said. Humans break rules for breakfast. Doyen grinned. We looked at their technology and asked questions they never asked. What if we combined this with that? What if we ignored their safety limits? What if we tried the thing they said was impossible? And you found answers. You found better questions. And those led to even better answers. The hybrid reactor was just the beginning. Teams across the facility made similar discoveries every week. Unikong's engineering division found ways to strengthen hegemony armor by adding human materials. A young physicist named Yoonji Seo redesigned alien plasma weapons to fire faster and hit harder. Navigation specialist Junhoim discovered that hegemony faster-than-light drives were deliberately limited by software that prevented them from reaching full potential. Why would they limit their own drives? Hannah asked when Gunho presented his findings. Fear, Junho replied. At full power, the drive creates stress on the ship's structure. The hegemony decided long ago that the risk was too great. So they installed limiters that keep the drive at 70% capacity. And if we remove the limiters, then we move faster than anything in the galaxy. Junho paused. Or we tear ourselves apart. There is no way to know without testing. Hannah looked at the data on the screen. Human pilots have been accepting those odds since we first learned to fly. The months continued to pass. The teams continued to work. And slowly, the impossible began to take shape. Admiral Taiho made weekly visits to monitor progress. Each time, he saw something new. The hybrid reactor grew more stable. The improved weapons became more deadly. The navigation systems became more precise. Ghost was no longer just a research facility. It was becoming a factory for miracles. We need to start thinking about what we're building, Yuna said during one of Taiho's visits. They stood on a platform overlooking the main assembly bay, where massive pieces of rebuilt alien technology waited for purpose. What do you mean? Taiho asked. We have the components for something incredible. Reactors that produce more power than hegemony battleships. Weapons that can crack their shields. Drives that can outrun their fastest vessels. Yuna turned to face him. Admiral, we can build a warship. Not just any warship. The most powerful warship the galaxy has ever seen. Taiho was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the assembled technology. He thought about the years of humiliation. He thought about Ambassador Vreth and his clicking mandibles. He thought about every time an alien had called humans primitive or cute or amusing. Do it, he said finally. Yuna nodded. She had expected this answer. She had been preparing for it. We will need a captain, she said. Someone who can command a ship like nothing that has existed before. Someone who thinks differently than hegemony officers expect. I have someone in mind. Did. Taiho pulled up a personnel file on his tablet. Captain Sung-Ho Beek. He has a reputation for unconventional tactics. The hegemony observers who watched his training exercises called him unpredictable and dangerous. They meant it as criticism. They meant it as a warning. Taiho smiled. I took it as a recommendation. The Ghost Project entered its next phase. The research teams continued their work, but now they had a clear goal. They were not just studying alien technology. They were building a weapon, a statement, a declaration that humanity would no longer accept its place at the bottom of the galactic order. Deep, beneath the Korean mountains, in a facility that did not exist, humanity was preparing to change everything. The hegemony had given them garbage and expected gratitude. Instead, they would receive a lesson they would never forget. Above the facility, life continued as normal. Humans went to work. Children went to school. The hegemony watched their minor species with the same amused contempt they had always shown. They had no idea what was coming. None of them did. Captain Sung-Ho Beek received his orders on a cold morning in December. He was on leave in his hometown of Sako, watching the winter waves crash against the shore when the secure message arrived. The words were simple. Report to coordinates. Tell no one. Bring nothing. Sung-Ho had served in Earth's defense fleet for 20 years. He had commanded patrol ships along the borders of human space. He had escorted cargo vessels through territories controlled by hostile alien species. He had done everything his superiors asked, even when those superiors were hegemony officers who treated him like a trained animal. Through it all, he had waited. He had known somehow that something would change, that humanity would not remain servants forever. And now, as he read the mysterious orders, felt that change approaching. The transport that collected him flew for 6 hours before landing inside a mountain. Suncho stepped out into a vast underground chamber filled with activity and noise. Workers moved in every direction. Machines hummed and sparked. The air smelled of metal and electricity and purpose. Admiral Taiho met him at the landing pad. Welcome to Ghosts, Taiho said. What you see here does not exist. What you learn here, you will never speak of. Is that understood? Sunjo nodded. Understood, Admiral. Good. Follow me. They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Sung-Ho saw laboratories filled with alien equipment. He saw workshops where humans built things that should have been impossible. He saw the determination in every face they passed. The quiet intensity of people working toward something greater than themselves. Finally, they reached a massive door marked with a single word, Forge. The door opened, and Sun-Ho stopped breathing. Before him, filling a cavern that could have held a small city, was a warship. It was not complete. Scaffolding surrounded its hull. Workers crawled over its surface like ants on a giant metal beast, but even unfinished. It was the most magnificent thing Sung-Ho had ever seen. The ship stretched over 2 kilometers from bow to stern. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, made from armor that seemed to drink the light. Weapon arrays covered every surface, their barrels pointing in all directions like the spines of some ancient predator. The engines at the rear were massive, 3 times larger than anything human ships had ever carried. This is the HSS Defiance, Taiho said, and you will be her captain. Sun-Ho could not find words. He simply stared at the impossible machine before him. Come, Taiho continued. Let me introduce you to the people who made this possible. Chief Engineer Unikong explained the ship's construction. Every piece of the Defiance had been built from salvaged alien technology, but nothing remained as the hegemony had designed it. The armor combined materials from 6 different species. The power systems merged reactor types that should have destroyed each other. The weapons fired faster, hit harder, and reached further than any alien equivalent. We did not copy their technology, Yuna said. We improved it. We asked questions they were too afraid to ask. We broke rules they were too limited to break. Dr. Minsu Cho showed Sung-ho the hybrid reactor core. It glowed with blue-white light that seemed almost alive. This produces more power than a hegemony battleship's entire engine room, Minsu explained. And it is only one of 3 cores we installed. The Defiance has more energy available than most space stations. Lieutenant Commander Hannah Yoon demonstrated the weapon systems. Plasma cannons that could fire 10 times per second, missile batteries loaded with warheads that could crack planetary shields, point defense systems that could track and destroy 1,000 targets simultaneously. The hegemony has never faced anything like this, Hannah said. Their tactics assume certain limits on speed, firepower, and maneuverability. The Defiance breaks all of those limits. Weapons specialist UNGSEO had personally redesigned every gun on the ship. She was young, barely 30, but her eyes held a fire that Sung-ho recognized. It was the same fire he felt in his own chest. They called my early designs primitive, Yunji told him. They said humans could not understand weapons technology. So I studied every weapon they threw away. I learned how they worked. Then I made them better. Navigation Officer Junho Im explained the modified, faster-than-light drive. Without their safety limiters, we can travel at speeds they believe are impossible. We can appear where they do not expect. We can escape before they can respond. The Defiance will be a ghost, striking from nowhere and vanishing before they can fight back. Sung-ho spent weeks learning every system on the ship. He walked every corridor. He studied every station. He met every member of the crew, 4,000 humans who had volunteered for a mission they knew might kill them all. Do they understand the risk? Sung-ho asked Taiho during a private meeting. They understand everything, Taiho replied. They know that when we reveal this ship, the hegemony will respond with everything they have. They know we might not survive the first battle. But they also know what happens if we do nothing. We remain servants forever. Exactly. Taiho leaned forward. Captain, I will not pretend this is a fair fight. The hegemony has thousands of warships. They have controlled the galaxy for 10 millennia. We have one ship, and the hope that we have built something they cannot defeat. Sung-ho thought about this for a long moment. He thought about his years of service under alien commanders who saw him as less than human. He thought about the children of Earth growing up under hegemony restrictions. He thought about what it meant to be told your species was inferior again and again until you almost believed it. One ship is enough, he said finally. If the ship is right and the crew believes in what they are fighting for, one ship can change everything. Taiho smiled. That is exactly what I hoped you would say. The final months of construction passed quickly. Systems were tested and retested. Crews trained in simulations that pushed them to their limits. The Defiance grew closer to completion with every passing day. On the morning the ship was declared ready. Sung-ho stood on the bridge for the first time as her official captain. The crew was at their stations. Every system glowed with power and potential. Through the view screen, he could see the massive doors of the underground facility beginning to open. Revealing the dark sky of a winter night, Communications Officer Narration looked up from her station. Captain, all departments report ready for launch. Sung-ho took his seat in the command chair. It felt right, as if this moment had been waiting for him all his life. Take us out, he said. The Defiance rose from the mountain like a creature emerging from its cocoon. Its engines blazed with light. Its hull caught the moonlight and seemed to glow with dark fire. It climbed through the atmosphere, past the clouds, past the satellites, and into the void of space. For the first time in human history, Earth had a weapon that could challenge the masters of the galaxy. The Defiance was ready, and so was her captain. The hegemony detected the Defiance 3 hours after it left Earth's atmosphere. Their sensor stations across the solar system lit up with alerts that made no sense. Something was moving through space with an energy signature that should not exist. Something that was not in any database. Something impossible. Ambassador Vreth was in his quarters on the orbital station above Earth when the report reached him. He read it twice, then 3 times, his compound eyes growing wider with each pass. The numbers were wrong. They had to be wrong. He contacted the Hegemony Sensor Command. Confirm these readings. Confirmed, Ambassador. The object is approximately 2 kilometers in length. Energy output exceeds standard hegemony battleship levels by a factor of 4. It appears to be of human origin. That is impossible. We are reading what our sensors tell us, Ambassador. Vreth ended the communication and stared at the wall of his quarters. Humans could not have built such a thing. They lacked the knowledge. They lacked the resources. They were primitives who could barely maintain the simple vessels the hegemony allowed them to operate. And yet, sensors did not lie. He contacted Admiral Taiho immediately. The human answered with a calm expression that Vreth found deeply disturbing. Admiral Park, explain the object our sensors have detected leaving your planet. Taiho smiled. Ah, you noticed. We were hoping you would. That is the HSS Defiance, Ambassador. A warship built entirely from the salvage your hegemony so generously provided. Vreth felt his mandibles clicking rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. That is impossible. That debris was damaged beyond repair. It was worthless scrap. It's worthless to you, perhaps. We found it quite educational. This is a violation of 17 different hegemony regulations regarding restricted technology, is it? Taiho's smile grew wider. We simply rebuilt what you gave us. Used your materials. Applied your technology. If we managed to improve upon your designs, well, that is hardly our fault. Vreth ended the communication without another word. He immediately contacted the Hegemony High Council and reported what had happened. The response came within the hour. 12 warships were dispatched from the nearest hegemony fleet. Each one was a current generation battlecruiser, far superior to anything made from salvaged debris. Their mission was simple: destroy the human vessel, seize all related technology, and punish Earth for its arrogance. Captain Sung-ho received the news from his tactical officer. 12 ships, Captain. Kethrani design? Latest models? They will arrive in Earth's orbit within 6 hours. Sung-ho nodded slowly. He had expected this. They all had. The moment the Defiance revealed itself, the hegemony would respond with overwhelming force. That was how they maintained control. That was how they had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. But the hegemony did not know what they were facing. All hands to battle stations, Sung-ho announced over the ship-wide communication system. This is what we trained for. This is what we built for. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity can do. The Defiance moved to intercept the incoming fleet. Junho pushed the engines to speeds that would have destroyed any hegemony vessel. The ship seemed to blur as it crossed distances that should have taken hours in mere minutes. They have detected us, Nari reported from communications. They are hailing. Put them on screen. The view screen showed a Kethrani admiral, his gray face twisted in what might have been anger or confusion. Human vessel. You will power down your weapons and surrender immediately. Resistance will result in your destruction. Sung-ho leaned forward in his chair. Admiral, I think there has been a misunderstanding. We are not here to surrender. We are here to return your salvage. Cut the communication before the alien could respond. All weapons ready, Yoonji reported from the weapons station. Targets locked. Navigation ready, Junho added. Attack pattern is programmed. Sung-ho looked at the tactical display. 12 enemy ships against 1? By any reasonable calculation, they should lose. But the Defiance was not reasonable. It was something the galaxy had never seen before. Begin attack. The Defiance moved like nothing the hegemony fleet expected. It accelerated to speeds their targeting systems could not track. It changed direction in ways that violated their understanding of physics. It was there, and then it was somewhere else.
And
their weapons fire passed through empty space. Yoonji's plasma cannons opened fire. The first hegemony ship died without ever understanding what hit it. Its shields, designed to withstand standard weapons fire for hours, collapsed in seconds under the sustained assault. The ship's hull cracked open. Atmosphere vented into space. Power failed. The vessel went dark and began to drift. The Defiance did not slow down. It swept through the enemy formation like a predator among prey. Junho's navigation kept them ahead of every counterattack. Yunji's weapons found weakness after weakness in hegemony designs. The hybrid reactors provided endless power, allowing the Defiance to fire and maneuver simultaneously in ways that should have been impossible. 2 more ships fell. Then 3 more. The hegemony fleet scattered, abandoning formation as they tried desperately to track the impossible human vessel. On the bridge, Sung-ho watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. His crew performed exactly as trained. Every system operated at peak efficiency. The Defiance was doing everything its designers had promised, and more. 3 ships attempting to flee, Hannah reported from her station. Should we pursue? Sung-ho considered for a moment. Let them go. We want survivors. Sir. We want them to tell the story. We want the hegemony to know exactly what happened here. The battle ended 11 minutes after it began. 9 hegemony warships were destroyed or disabled. 3 fled toward deep space, their engines pushing to maximum as they ran from the nightmare they had encountered. The Defiance floated among the debris, completely undamaged. Communications Officer Nari looked up with wide eyes. Captain, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Every species with sensors in this sector witnessed what just happened. The communications networks are overloading with traffic. Sung-ho nodded slowly. He had known this would happen. The hegemony had ruled through fear and the assumption of superiority. Today, humanity had shattered that assumption. He opened a channel to Admiral Taiho on Earth. The Admiral's face appeared on screen. His expression a mixture of pride and determination. Captain Beak, report. Mission accomplished, Admiral. 9 enemy vessels destroyed. 3 escaped to spread the word. The Defiance sustained no damage. Taiho closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they were bright with unshed tears. You have given humanity its future, Captain. Well done. The Defiance turned back toward Earth. Behind it, the wreckage of the hegemony fleet drifted in the cold silence of space. Metal that had been warships only minutes ago now floated as debris. Joining the garbage that the hegemony had once dumped on humanity, the irony was not lost on anyone. On worlds across the galaxy, the news spread like fire through dry grass. A minor species, dismissed as primitive and unimportant, had defeated a hegemony battle fleet in 11 minutes. A ship built from Salvage had destroyed the most advanced vessels the hegemony could deploy. Everything. It was about to change, and this was only the beginning. The message spread. Across 1,000 star systems in a matter of hours, species that had been conquered by the hegemony centuries ago heard it in their hidden gathering places. Species that had been enslaved heard it whispered in their work camps. Species that had given up hope suddenly found that hope burning bright again. The humans had won. Admiral Taiho stood before the United Earth Council 3 days after the battle. The chamber was filled with representatives from every nation on the planet, their faces showing the same mixture of emotions: pride, fear, determination, and uncertainty about what would come next. The hegemony will respond, Taiho told them. They have no choice. If they allow this defeat to stand unanswered, their entire empire begins to crumble. Every species they have conquered will see that the masters can be beaten. They cannot permit that. Then we must prepare for war, said the council president. We must prepare for more than war. We must prepare to lead. Taiho changed the display behind him to show a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked hegemony territory, covering nearly half of all known space. Blue dots marked the territories of other species, many of them conquered or controlled. And in one small corner, a green dot marked Earth. For 40 years, we have been alone. A minor species, isolated and dismissed. But today, we received over 300 requests for alliance from species across the galaxy. They have seen what we did. They want to know how we did it. And most importantly, they want to know if we will help them do the same. The council chamber erupted in voices, everyone speaking at once. Taiho let the noise continue for a moment before raising his hand for silence. The hegemony maintained control through technology. They kept their advances secret. They prevented other species from learning. They made sure that no one could ever challenge them. We broke that system. And now we must decide what to do with what we have learned. The decision took 3 days of debate, but in the end, it was unanimous. Earth would share its knowledge. Earth would build more ships. Earth would lead a coalition of free species against the hegemony that had oppressed them all. Dr. Minsu. Cho opened the first Academy of Unified Sciences 2 months after the battle. Students arrived from 17 different species, all of them eager to learn the techniques that had created the defiance. Minsu taught them what his team had discovered, that the key to progress was not following rules, but questioning them. The hegemony built walls between different technologies, Minsu told his first class. They told everyone that certain combinations were impossible. We proved them wrong. Now it is your turn to prove them wrong again, in ways we have not yet imagined. Chief Engineer Unikong supervised the construction of 6 new shipyards around Earth. The Ghost Facility, once a secret buried under mountains, was now a public symbol of human achievement. Workers from a dozen species labored alongside humans, building vessels that incorporated ideas from cultures across the galaxy. The defiance was just the beginning, Una told a reporter from an allied world. That ship proved what is possible. Now we are building what should be possible, and then we will build what no one has dreamed possible. The hegemony stopped innovating thousands of years ago. They thought they had reached perfection. We know that perfection does not exist. There is always something better to discover. Captain Sung-Ho Beek spent most of his time training new commanders. The small fleet that Earth was building needed leaders who understood the new way of warfare. He taught them to think differently, to abandon the predictable tactics that the hegemony expected. They have thousands of ships, Sung-Ho explained to his students. We have fewer. But our ships are better, and our crews think in ways they cannot predict. Speed, surprise, and innovation will defeat numbers and tradition. Remember that. Lieutenant Commander Hannah Yoon became the commander of Earth's Special Operations Division. Her teams trained soldiers from allied species in tactics that combined human creativity with alien abilities. Some species could see in spectrums humans could not. Others could survive in environments that would kill a human instantly. Together, it became something none of them could have been alone. Weapons Specialist. Yonjiesio continued improving the designs she had created. Each new version of her plasma cannons was more powerful than the last. She worked with scientists from allied species to incorporate their technologies, creating weapons that no single civilization could have imagined. Navigation Officer Jun Hoem trained pilots in the dangerous art of unlimited, faster-than-light travel. Many ships were lost in the early days, destroyed by the stresses of traveling at speeds the hegemony considered impossible. But slowly, the techniques improved. The losses decreased. And humanity's fleet grew faster and more deadly with each passing month. The hegemony did not remain quiet during this time. They assembled the largest battle fleet in their history, over 1,000 warships drawn from across their empire. They announced their intention to crush humanity and all species that had allied with them. They broadcast warnings across the galaxy, promising destruction to anyone who stood with Earth. But the warnings did not have the effect they intended. Instead of frightening species into submission, they pushed more of them toward the human alliance. The hegemony had ruled through fear for 10,000 years. Now that fear was turning to anger. 1 year after the Battle of Earth, Admiral Tai-ho addressed a gathering of representatives from 47 species. They stood together in a chamber on a neutral station, watching as he spoke. The hegemony gave humanity their garbage, Tai-ho said. They expected us to melt it down and be grateful. Instead, we learned from it. We improved upon it. We built something that terrified them. He paused, looking at the faces before him. Some were human. Most were not. All of them shared the same expression of determination. They come to destroy us. They bring 1,000 ships and believe that numbers will be enough. They have forgotten, or perhaps they never knew, that it is not the size of the fleet that matters. It is the will of those who fight. It is the hunger for freedom. It is the refusal to accept that any species is lesser than any other. The chamber erupted in cheers. Representatives from species that had never agreed on anything before and now stood united. The hegemony had created this alliance through their own arrogance, and now they would face its consequences. In her quarters aboard the Defiance, Hannah Yoon looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the hegemony fleet was approaching. Somewhere out there, the greatest battle in galactic history was about to begin. And somewhere out there, the future was waiting to be written. She thought about the journey that had brought them here. The insults they had endured, the garbage they had been given, the impossible things they had built from scraps and determination. The hegemony had underestimated humanity from the very beginning. They had called humans primitive. They had called them amusing. They had called them inferior. They would never make that mistake again. Hannah smiled and turned from the window. There was work to do. A war to win. A galaxy to free, and humanity was just getting started.